and thank you for joining today. My name is Wes Oliver, and I'm with PITS. I will be joined today with Shay Shmeltzer and Stefan LaRocca presenting on Oracle Forms or Oracle ADF and the alternatives for Java EE. So again, thank you everyone for joining. We've given a few extra minutes here for everyone to join, so we will get started. So quickly here, I'll be doing an introduction on PITS before handing it off to Stefan. PITS, we were founded in 1999, and in that time, we've built up a client base of about 500 companies based out of 40 countries. These clients are supported by 80 team members based out of 5 different locations. Our world headquarters is based out of Germany. We have a North American headquarter based out of Detroit, Michigan. Our UK and international headquarter is based out of London, UK. And we also have sales offices based out of Mexico and Brazil. And a little bit about what we do. So starting in '99, our core focus was revolving around Oracle Forms, whether it be upgrades or supporting customers with their Forms applications. Over the years, we've grown our skill sets into a number of different areas, specifically because of different client requirements needing assistance with Oracle Forms migrations to other technologies. And today, obviously, we'll be focusing on ADF and some of our Java-based experience. Now, our core philosophy here at PITS is that we listen to each customer's unique service and technology needs, we guide customers through structured digital transformations, and we help customers realize business value at each step of the modernization process. So really, what we aim to do is be more of a consultant instead of just kind of a company that focuses on one technology. So we look at what your current strengths are internally, and we build the digital transformation process around that. And how we do that is with a number of different solutions. We have a use case analysis that helps you better understand how your user base is interacting with your application. We offer a portfolio assessment that focuses on your IT infrastructure as a whole and how we can improve that. And then we have our proprietary tool, PITSCon, which is used to accelerate forms-based modernization projects. And we also have our full stack team, everyone from project managers to engineers to architects and developers. So really we can handle all portions of the project. And really with that, I would like to pass it over to Stefan, and he'll dive into some of the content today.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for this quick introduction. Let me share my screen. Okay, so for today's session, we'd like to stab a little bit more deeper into different kind of Java EE frameworks, nevertheless taking consideration to ADF as well. So to have a motivation for that topic, or to see what is the history of different kind of frameworks, let me give a very short overview of what's going on. So the timeline you see over here is dramatically changed the software architecture we have to consider during software development. So in the last couple of years, some pattern change, some technology change, and perhaps a couple of legacy applications is set up with the picture of number 2 or 3 in mind when starting, and try to adapt year by year and in different versions to fulfill very modern requirements. So, and today, right now, there are so many. You have to think about perhaps serverless computing, microservices, IoT, cloud services, and whatever. So it's very hard to identify what is the best framework for you to fulfill all these requirements. And not even to decide the framework, it's starting with what is my best program language to use, and not to learn and adopt so many different kind of languages and getting confused during that. That you're not able to see anything on this slide is really the usage of the slide, and the slide is good for that, because that is a list of different program languages available on the typical Wikipedia page. So you see that it's over, if you like to count, over 300 different program languages available. You could choose to start your own software development. But that doesn't make sense. It makes sense to take care about the most popular one and the most fancy one to choose, to see that all your requirements is able to fulfill. So how to choose that? The first one is take a look at some kind of comparison, some kind of indexes which is available. And I took one of the most popular one. It's the TOBI Programming Community Index, and they like to, or they rank year by year different program languages according to popularity. That is, how many block entries are available, how many downloads, how many entries on stacking. And so Java is one of the most popular language out there. So it makes sense to start with Java and don't make the failure to not consider Java. Java is able to fulfill a lot of requirements and have some very good frameworks on top to have a very powerful and straightforward software development available for your enterprise application. But how to choose the framework itself? What is the steps we have to take care of if we start evaluating a framework? And there are two different kind of views on this choice. The first one is belonging to your inside, more or less. So that is, what is your team you like to develop with? Is it only one developer and he's full with work for a very small application? Or do you have a distributed team with hundreds of software developers sitting on different locations? So that is typically a different requirement for a framework. So that will have influence on your choose. On the other side, what is your customer? So what is your application designed for? How does the customer like to consume your application? Is it only as an app from an app store like Angry Birds available and that's the only customer you like to address? Or is it an enterprise application you like to allow different kind of channels to have access to your data and to your application? So on the other side, is it an in-house application? So your customer is only your own employees, or do you like to sell your application to hundreds and thousands of users? Third part to take into consideration is your application itself. So how big will the application look like at the end? How many releases do you like to plan? Do you have a very release-intensive deployment approach to have patches week by week, or is it a one application deployed every 2 years with minor bug fixes or whatever? So even this influence the best framework to choose. And more or less your existing seed. I'd like to have a picture like a tree in my mind. So when a tree is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and producing a couple of seeds and fruits, you won't cut the tree to start on a very greenfield approach. You like to pick up the most worthful things from your existing environment of application. So if you like to go to a new software development framework, let's take a look what you already have in your pocket, what is always available. And the simple thing to take over is a data model at least, but you can think about a couple of validation, business logic, process description, which are already perhaps available, to prove them, to evaluate them, and to see what is best fit into the next framework. Before we take a quick look on a couple of frameworks, let's start a very small poll. to see if there is any tense outside the audience who likes to go to one or the other frameworks. So I'd like to ask Hubert if he's able to start a quick poll. That is a couple of questions. Each of them will running for 30 seconds. So please choose the possibility to give your favorites to these questions, so we are able to see what's going on in the next slide. Okay, second question belongs to your favorite points for a decision-making process. So what do you think is the most part you're interested in the new framework, like security aspects, integration, support, perhaps if it's a commercial or an open source solution, some transformation process of new processes into the digitalization, or something different. Okay, third one is to see what is your time frame when you think it will be a relevant topic in your daily business. Imagine you rule likes, or you start from this perspective. What do you think could be a good starting point for you and your project and your business? Okay, and last but not least, the last question is belonging to your actual application size. I know that has been very diffuse to answer, but it has a quick overview on how big your application is. And we see later on a couple of frameworks are best fit for very small applications or more or less microservices, and the other ones are good for enterprise application. Okay, thank you for that. Let's go on with our presentation. Framework itself is very useful in your software development process. It doesn't make sense to start with a very small editor and writing Java code line by line, so you have to choose a framework. And a couple of topics we discussed about are given in the slide before. On the other hand, there are more outside arguments to decide for the frameworks. So that is very good described on the web page I copied in on this slide. You see it's from a very famous web presentation for Jack Center. So they describe how to choose a framework and what could be topics to discuss about. That is one of them is security. And security is given by how many patches does the framework provide. Is there a lot of one-off patches so the framework could not be stable, or is it a very good major release plan behind the framework? Support, I think it's self-describing. Is it a very broad community and huge community using that, or is it very good commercial support behind the framework? The license, it is billing for, it's a commercial framework or an open source, but take care, not every open source is really open source. A couple of them have some hidden costs behind. Hype factor is very interesting from my perspective. I have a lot of discussions with our customer what is the best framework to use, and the discussion is very often very personal. So some guys like to have the news, the fancy, the latest toolkit in town, but on the other hand, they said, or the other one said, that is not set it down, that is not very good supported. I don't know if the framework is available next year. It's fancy, but is it stable or not? I don't know. So they like to choose the older one, which are available on the market for years and years. The organization itself is definitely a vote to hear for. You could not decide as one person to use another framework than the rest of the company. So you have to take care about rules and policies and something like that. And one question is, how good is a framework in allowing other technologies to be part on the same table? Is it a closed ecosystem, or are open APIs, interfaces, microservices available to consume other parts of other frameworks? So now let's start in. What is the framework we choose? And that is our personal perspective mixed with some votes we get from framework, from tools which try to evaluate frameworks. So there's a website outside in Rebel Labs. They are giving votes for Java web frameworks year by year. So so it is not helpful to ignore them. So Spring MVC and Spring Boot is definitely to take in consideration, as well as JSF. And inside JSF, we take PrimeFaces as the candidate for the JSF framework. And with a couple of customers, we get into discussion with the Vaadin as another framework. And that is what I'd like to describe in very few slides, 2 slides for each framework, to have an overview of these existing frameworks. So go on, starting with Spring. Spring MVC is supported by Pivotal, a company we are living in a very intensive partnership with. And Spring MVC, I see it's a very old and settled framework. It's on the market for over 15 years. And Spring is very known for the way they describe or they set up the Java EE application. That is with very cool features like dependency injection, which reduce the dependency to the infrastructure where the application is running in. And they use AOP, aspect-oriented programming, that is very good for cross-functionality. So if you have logging functionalities or security issues or transaction handling, you have not to write that in each and every line and unit and class. That can be done by AOP and a centralized way. There are a couple of data projects available, so you can bound underneath more or less every data source you can imagine, and Spring provide an own project called Spring Data. And that is the philosophy more or less behind Spring, the framework. There are very huge amount of projects available you can bound into your software development. MVC is more or less the backbone, and you can put different kind of other frameworks on top. So what is pros and cons from this framework? It's very fine modular. So at the end, you get only that what you need. You can set up a very small enterprise application with all those parts of Spring you really need. It's a very cool dependency management to set up complex application in an easy and very easy to manage dependency management. It's portable to more or less every web container you can imagine, and there's a very broad, wide, and huge community to support Spring. But on the other side, you will see it's not complete in itself. Most of the customers we saw take another framework on top or beside to fulfill the enterprise application. So Spring is one part, and you need another framework as well. So it's not described as a rapid application tool. So it's a lot of things to do, a lot of handmade, and a lot of coding. And for a beginner not familiar with the JEE stack and Java itself, it's very complex to learn. So you have to have a very intensive training. To ease that step, Spring has Spring Boot available in their two sets. Spring Boot set up a more or less complete ecosystem for your enterprise application, following the parent convention over configuration. So everything is ready to prepare, is ready to run. So at the end, there's a very lightweight application server bound inside You can set up with a wizard your project in the web, download everything that's necessary, and start, and very quick start. And it's very a good choice to use that to set up microservices, because you can, from the data model to the UI, in a very small and efficient way to set up your application. So what I say, it's very easy to set up, easy to deploy, and very easy to debug. So small and handy, and very, very good to use. On this other side, it's bound to a specific focus. So you address all those predefined components, and if you like to use any other component, it's very complicated to integrate. At the end, coding is still very intensive, and you have to write your lines of code on and on and on. And it's definitely not used for complete and very huge enterprise applications. As I said before, Spring is good for the backend, for the controllers, and for the data binding. From the UI perspective, one of the most famous toolkit or toolset or framework we see in all our projects is PrimeFaces. That is more or less the quasi-standards implementation for JSF in the background. It follows the concepts of the model view controller pattern, and it's very easy to set up own modular and reusable components to have a very good looking user interface with tons of different UI components. In that framework, that is very easy to put in your environment because it's coming along with a simple jar file. So that is the only thing you need to use PrimeFace in your existing enterprise application. As well as Spring, PrimeFaces, and the underlying JSF technology has a very huge community. Whenever you have a question, you will definitely find on the first page of your Google search result the solution. And Java, just to note, PrimeFaces is the winner of the Duke Choice Award last year for Enterprise Java, in the Enterprise Java part. On the cons, we see it's just a complementary framework, so it's not good for your complete enterprise application. You definitely need other tools roundabout. The data binding can get very complicated if you set up very huge applications, so that is a con we see in our project. And if you're not familiar with the JSF components in deep and the reusability, it's very easy, and easy is not the good way here. It's very easy to set up very complex UI, and it's very hard to maintain and to debug. Last but not least, we like to take a look at Vaadin. That is a framework we are seeing in a few lists of our customers. They evaluate Vaadin, and they're very happy with that and try to go this way. It's still a pure Java framework. So like the other frameworks as well, it's all coding on server side. It's just Java coding on server side, but Vaadin includes Java to JavaScript compiler to generate a UI. And that is based on the Google Web Toolkit. And within Vaadin, you can use Java to let these GBT parts running on client side. There's a very good support for the IDE Eclipse. With the Visual Designer, you can set up your UI with your Whatyouseeiswhatyouget editor. And there are a couple of very cool plugins available on their site. So like fancy spreadsheets and graphs and so on, because they are able to use JavaScript for the UI components. It's very easy to bound to a Spring project in the backend, so both of those parts play very well together. And it's very easy to implement what we see. It's very straightforward. It's all done in Java on the server side. So you can set up a Vaadin project on very easy. The cool plugins on the other side result in a couple of hidden costs. So if you like to have the complete Vaadin available with all your functionalities, it's a framework you have to pay for. Due to the fact that the compiler generates the JavaScript code based for GBT, the size of the code is getting very huge. It's very lot of code which is generated, and that is in some situations very risky for the performance, because the architecture of the generated JavaScript front end and the Java implementation in the back end results in very huge amount of round trips on your application server, and that could end up in not a good performance. So you have to take care for that. So we have a couple of frameworks with their typically behaviors and the pro and cons. And what we like to do, and that is what we are here, to take a deeper look how ADF is comparing to these kind of frameworks. What are the strengths and what are the features and the view from Oracle to their own framework, ADF. So I'm very proud to have Shay together in our webinar from the product management from Oracle, just coming back from the Oracle Open World right into our webinar. And I'd like to hand over to Shay, stop my screen sharing, and it's up on you to make all of us happy.
Thanks, Stefan.
So, wait a second. I stopped my screen sharing. Wait. Lost my mouse. So, over here. It's up on you.
All right. So, hey everyone, my name is Shay Shmeltzer. I'm Director of Product Management at the Oracle Cloud Development Tools Group. We're basically the group that builds development tools for Oracle, internal use as well as for customers. We basically provide the tools for both sides. You have here my Twitter handle if you want to follow me and get some updates and things like that about the technologies we're doing. And what I'll do today is I'll give you a short overview of Oracle ADF and what it does and how we use it and what we see as the benefits of it. So Oracle ADF, in terms of definition, it's a complete development framework that simplifies development of Java-based enterprise applications, focusing on declarative and visual development approach. So that's kind of the one-sentence definition. And I highlighted a few words here. So the first word is Java. This is a framework that is built on the concepts of Java Enterprise Edition, Java EE. It uses Java as the development language. It's based on standard technology like JSF, uses standard Java language. So any developer who knows Java will find it quite easy to pick up Oracle ADF and use it. The other aspect here is the completeness. We were looking for a framework that actually covers all the layers of the applications, from the UI layer to how do I access my database, to how do I do security over the layers, how do I add customization, how do I add reusability of business flows. All of those are covered in a single integrated framework. So you're not taking like various frameworks and trying to patch them together. You're getting something that out of the box has all the connections built in. And then we're focusing on simplification of Java EE development by giving you framework capabilities on one side, and then on the other side, the declarative and visual development approach to Java EE, which I think is one of the key unique aspects of what ADF gives you. It's the development experience. So we actually use Oracle ADF internally inside Oracle to build a lot of stuff. Probably the most important thing here is the Oracle SAS application, the software as a service application. So those are modules like the Oracle Human Capital Management, Customer Relationship Management, ERP Management. All of those big SAS-based applications, the new generation of them, are built with Oracle ADF. Those were used to be called the Fusion application when they were on-premise, and now that all of those applications are running in the cloud, they are referred to as the Oracle SAS applications. And you can see samples of the user interface that we created for those with Oracle ADF on your screen. There's a huge number of developers in the thousands inside Oracle that are using ADF to build those applications. We are actually taking templates and UI concepts that we developed for Oracle SAS, and we're also sharing it with the ADF community, so the rest of the ADF community can build the same types of applications. This is something we call the RDK, Rapid Development Kit, which is basically a bunch of templates that would help you create the same look and feel. But Oracle ADF is not just for the SAS applications. We're also using it to create a lot of our other products. Over here, you have a couple of screenshots showing you, for example, on the right side, the Oracle Process Cloud service, which is a service that allows you to define processes in your organization. And again, all the user interface, all the backend is built with Oracle ADF. Okay. On the left side, you're seeing some of our management consoles for your cloud services. And again, those are built with Oracle ADF. You can see, again, very clean user interface, very highly focused on visualization of data through graph charts. All of this, again, built with ADF. And we also create a bunch of other internal products, internal systems built with ADF. For example, this is partly internal, partly external system called the Oracle support site. So if you have any questions to the Oracle support, you go to our website, My Oracle Support, and you're actually inside an Oracle ADF application where you can see all your service requests, see documents, do searches, all of this built with Oracle ADF user interfaces. Beyond that, again, Oracle ADF is used by a lot of our customers to build their enterprise applications. And you might be wondering, how do they do it and what is ADF internally? So ADF is a framework based on the MVC architecture, Model View Controller, with a clear separation of the layers. Okay. The view layer, we actually have two options here. The main options that people are using is a JSF implementation. So this covers the view and the controller layer, but we actually extended what comes out of the box with the core JSF with more advanced controller layer. We call it the ADF controller or task flows. And the focus there is on the ability to create reusable flows. Okay, so those are flows that you can share among multiple applications and that you can connect one to the other and call one from the other. In fact, you can use a complete shareable flow inside another page, allowing you to create single-page applications. On the view layer, the ADF Faces set of components provide you with a very rich set of user interface components with very rich behavior to create those appealing user interfaces you saw in the previous slide. Another type of user interface, by the way, that we're able to do is Office, Microsoft Office, specifically Excel spreadsheet. And we have a plugin to Excel that allows you to directly connect to our business services using the common model layer that is common across all the ADF applications. The model layer role is to abstract the implementation of the business service from the person who builds the UI. So when you're building the user interface, you don't care how the business service is implemented. You're just dragging and dropping your way into connecting to this business service. On the business service side, one part of ADF that is available there is the ADF business components. And that's a very specialized part of the framework that deals with connectivity to a database. This can be an Oracle database, but also other databases, not necessarily Oracle databases. And it deals with accessing the tables, doing all the CRUD operation, managing relationship, query by example, range fetching, sorting, all the capabilities that you would expect from a framework that knows how to work with a database. In addition, you can plug into ADF any Java class or EJBs or web services, whether they are REST or SOAP and other capabilities. All are functioning as business object that you can drag and drop in your user interface to use in your application. On the side, you can see the ADF security framework. Again, this is an end-to-end security framework that allows you to define who can access which business object, do what operation, which then impacts which UI components are going to be available for him, whether fields will be in update mode or not. You can control which pages are exposed to what roles, and basically a full end-to-end security system. And we also have a unique capability implemented through the metadata services layer, which allows you to customize an application with additional layers of customization, having one base application that you tailor with specific behaviors to different customers, which again, for us as a vendor that produces a single set of applications and then shares it among multiple customers, it's an important feature to have. So some of the key features that ADF provides you. So the first thing is a very rich set of JSF UI component. Again, JSF, that's the standard view controller layer for Java EE. And we basically provide you a set of over 150 UI components that deal with every aspect of your page, from your layouting of the page to how you show tables and lists, and how you show charts and maps and graph and gauges and a lot of data visualization. Then we have an advanced controller layer, allowing you to create modular reusable flows. One of the nice aspects of this approach is that it makes it very easy for big development teams to let each developer focus on a specific business flow that he is working on, and then collect all those flows into a single application in a very modular way that allows us to work in those very big development teams with a very big set of applications with hundreds of forms that we're creating. We have a layer that allows you to create reusable business services functionality that you can then, again, reuse across application or expose to be used by other applications for standard web services interfaces. We have a very powerful database access functionality built into the application. Everything from, again, creating with a click of a button a full CRUD-compatible business object on top of your database, to managing relationships and handling fetching data in a smart way to increase your performance of your application, to a bunch of other database-related capabilities that we're able to use. One of the nice things here is that we're giving you the power to base your business object on SQL, so you can actually leverage the power of the database to create your Java business object. And then the ability to take those business objects and expose them through REST and SOAP services, allowing you to integrate the business services you built here with other applications. Again, a very unique layer for customization and personalization layer, and a security framework built in. But I think the most distinctive feature of Oracle ADF is actually the development environment that we provide. Most Java frameworks rely on you going over and writing Java code, building configuration files, and working mostly in a code editor. And while you can do the same thing in ADF, at least the beginning of your experience is going to be much more visual and declarative. And it's in every layer of the application. Okay, so we built a development tool around the framework that allows you to visually design your user interface. So you have a list of UI components on the right side that you can drag and drop into a visual editor to design your page. When you're connecting to the database, you have a wizard that basically shows you which tables you have. You can choose which fields you want to have. You can then customize them all through declarative features. Okay. When you're building a business process flow, you're doing it visually with a process flow diagram. Okay. Now, all of those things actually translate into code. Okay, so what we're doing here is not a step of press a button and generate code, but rather we're giving you a visual way to create your code. So at any point of time inside JDeveloper, the development tool for ADF, there's a tab that is called source. And when you switch to the source, you can actually directly manipulate the source. And when you click back to switch to the design view, you'll see the changes you made in code directly reflected in your user interface in the visual development experience. And we believe this is a key aspect of making a development framework much more productive to develop with. Okay? If we're looking at the background of the developers that are using ADF, a lot of them are coming not necessarily from being expert Java developers, but rather from being used to other productive enhancing tools of the past, whether it's Oracle Forms or Visual Basic or Power Builder or a bunch of other tools like that were used in environments like PeopleSoft or Siebel. All of those environments have the common notion of having a tool to increase your productivity. And when we transition those developers into the world of Java, we believe that having such a tool would make them much more productive. And even if you're a professional Java developers, you would find that with these tools, it's easier to actually understand what you're building. It's much more easier to understand your page structure rather than looking at the code and trying to imagine how your page is going to look when you can actually look at the page as you're building it. Now, ADF is server-side Java-based framework, and that's a great solution for a lot of cases. But what we're seeing in the industry in the last couple of years is a move, at least on the UI side, to other types of frameworks, frameworks that leverage the client layer and the client capabilities more deeply. Those are mostly JavaScript-based user interface frameworks, things like Angular or React, or in our case, Oracle Jet. All of those are frameworks that deal with leveraging the browser capabilities more deeply, and also being able to run on multiple mobile devices and not necessarily just inside the browser. And one nice thing about ADF is that we can take all the investment that we had in building the business services in ADF using the ADF business component layer and leverage those business services with new types of user interfaces by exposing those services as REST services. And we actually have a wizard inside ADF, and through a couple of clicks, you can actually take any of your business service and create this REST interface that can be then leveraged by other types of user interfaces. And in fact, this is something we've been doing inside Oracle in various projects and cloud services over the past couple of years. Okay. So one of the nice things, again, about ADF is this separation of layers. While we're giving you a full framework with all the layers covered, you can also pick up specific parts of the framework, use them, and then tie them into other frameworks for leveraging those. And one of the nice things about this capability of exposing ADF Business Component as REST services is the breadth of features that you get out of it. Okay. One thing to understand is that once you basically point ADF BC at a table and say, create a REST service for this table or for this relationship, we are able to automatically manage for you aspects like supporting sorting and pagination for your REST service. Okay. Data consistency, batch transactions, which are very important for REST-based applications in terms of performance. Out-of-the-box capabilities such as querying and finding records, optimized payloads, so you can actually decide which fields you're actually transferring over the rest. And of course, implementing all the security that we had before in the same way for your REST services. So ADF is a great solution for building the backend for the new generation of JavaScript REST-based user interfaces. So just to summarize some of the benefits of ADF as we see it, one aspect is protecting from technology changes. ADF is a framework that has been around for about 18, 19 years now in various ways and formats. And over the years, we were able to leverage ADF across maturing technologies as they became available. For example, when we started with ADF, we used to expose our business services through something called Corba interfaces. Then we exposed it through SOAP interfaces, and today we're doing it with REST interfaces. Okay. On the UI layer, our charts, for example, used to be static images. Then they became Flash images, and today they're actually using the Jet technology to create SVG-based, client-optimized, JavaScript-enabled UI components for charting with a lot of client-side behaviors, all of them built into ADF. And through those technology changes, our developers didn't need to learn each new technology, each new minute details about how to implement those. They kept working with those abstraction layers that ADF provides them, such as a component and a business object. Okay. The visual development experience with ADF allows developers to become productive very quickly, reducing their learning curve and increasing their productivity in their day-to-day work. Okay. We also provide you with an integrated development platform. This means that with one development tool, you can cover all the layers of the application. And it also is the same development tool for building a bunch of other stuff inside the Oracle ecosystem, whether it's the integration layer with the Oracle SOA services, whether it's Portal with Web Center Portal, whether it's business intelligence. All of those are integrated into the same development environment. All of them integrate nicely with ADF. So You get a consolidation of your tooling portfolio. And if you're an Oracle customer, one thing that you can feel comfortable with is that you're actually using the same framework that Oracle is using, the same strategic direction that Oracle is following for development. And then, of course, beyond the business benefit, there are the architectural benefits of ADF. Again, a very high focus on building in a modular way, in building components that are reusable across application, across pages, on being able to support standardization in your application through templates, on abstraction, layers of customization and agility, and then openness, the ability to work with any Java business object, and completeness in terms of end-to-end framework that truly covers all your business application needs. So that's basically what I had to say about Oracle ADF, and at this point of time, I'm going to turn it back to the pits guys.
Thank you very much, Shay, for that very impressive presentation. So let's see what we are achieved so far. We have a lot of arguments coming up from ADF and the other frameworks, which allow us to evaluate what is the best framework for you and your application. And according to the audience, please keep in mind there are a couple of arguments you have to take into consideration before you evaluate such kind of framework for your enterprise application. You know, it's your team, and we heard about very good arguments. What is belonging to the team and the history of your developers? Where did they come from? How easy it is to step into a new architecture or a new framework? We see a lot of benefits for my customers in ADF for customization and security concepts. So keep that in mind to see what is your best choice. From our perspective, we live in a very tight and successful partnership together with Oracle, and I'm very proud of that, having Shay in this webinar and working together with Oracle in a couple of projects. Some customers decide on the other way around to go with other partners like Pivotal. We are in a very good partnership together with Pivotal and listed on their partnership page. We have a couple of projects, so we are familiar as well in the Spring framework as we are in ADF, or on the other hand, PrimeFaces and Vaadin. So that is, every framework has a couple of strengths and a couple of weaknesses, so it's on you to evaluate that. How could that be achieved? And that is what we provide you in the audience as an offer. We have today's session that is an overview of a couple of JE frameworks, and we are able to guide you to your decision process, beginning with an orientation day, to have one day available to step into more detailed discussion on specific frameworks, to see pros and cons in more than 1 hour. And that ends in something like proof of concept or pilot. Especially for your choice for ADF, there's a good offer from our sales team. We have a 10 steps to ADF offer to bring you and your application in very small 10 described steps from your existing landscape into the world of ADF. So if you're interested in these wonderful and very comprehensive offer, please get in contact with our sales guys. But before I hand over, no, not before, before we stop the presentation, we have a couple of questions raised, some of them coming up with the registration formula. And I'd like to take some minutes to answer those questions. So for that, I hand over to Wes. He present us the questions. And so give me a second to see. I have to stop my presentation. Okay, so it's up on you. Okay, question number 1 is, how do Google Vector Toolkit and Vaadin compare when looking at the surface? So Vaadin use GWT to generate the UI. So from the look and feel, it's more or less the same, but it's not all available components from GWT are bound into the Vaadin framework. So whenever there's a component available, it looks like the same, either if you use Google Web Toolkit or Vaadin, but you are a little bit limited in the Vaadin ecosystem. What are the pros and cons of different frameworks for the final decision? Yeah, I hope we could figure out a couple of those in today's session. So there are a couple of question, arguments, points to consider. In the end, there is no true or false, left or right choice for one of those frameworks. It depends on a couple of points. How productive are the individual frameworks? How good is the tool support? The productivity is depending on, in my perspective, my personal perspective, on one hand, in how easy it is to start with the framework, and on the other side, how easy it is to maintain my running application. And so you see different perspectives of the frameworks. On one hand, we have Spring Boot to very quick start with an application, but at the end, a lot of coding inside. And on the other side, you see ADF, which is easy to set up, easy to understand and to step into. How good is the tool support? I believe there are differences in the community support, and that is very good community support for Spring and PrimeFace part. On the other side, if you have support questions for ADF, there's a very good support from the Oracle TechNet. We saw a picture over there. So whenever there's a question raised up, you have the possibility to get support from Oracle. And so support is not only how many questions get solved, but also how long the tool is supported. Question number 4, I'd like to hand over to Shay. I know we have a discussion on that last year on the DOAC.
Right.
You have your perspective.
Yeah, so someone is asking if ADF is no longer relevant for the view level. So I wouldn't say this is the case, because we have a lot of ADF user interfaces. I just showed you a bunch of them, and they are still working, right? They are still very impressive visually. They still function great in terms of the UI experience. And if you look at some of the features that made it into ADF in the latest editions, a lot of them have to do with improving the UI experience in your browser, reducing network traffic to the server, and focusing on performance of the user interface. So I think you can still build great user interfaces with Oracle ADF. That being said, again, if you look across the industry in general, over the past several years, in the UI layer, there is a move from server-side generated UI into a much more client-centric architecture. And it's kind of up to you to decide if these moves make sense to you, okay? If this answers specific technical requirements that you have, if you're ready to deal with the complexities of this move in terms of the architecture and the development experience. It's not the same experience to build an application that manages transactions and interaction with the backend when you're doing client-centric versus server-centric. There are different challenges there. Not that it's not possible, it's definitely possible. It's up to you to decide if this is the architecture that meets your need. And if this architecture meets your needs, yeah, you can feel free to use any JavaScript technology such as Oracle Jet to build your UI. And I think ADF can still be a great solution for the backend for those applications. And in a lot of cases, we are seeing scenarios where people are using, maybe they already have ADF applications, and some of the new modules are being built with Oracle Jet UI, leveraging the same business services. So bottom line, I don't think that ADF is no longer relevant. I think ADF continues to be very relevant. I also think that more and more people are looking for a UI layer with the capabilities that Oracle Jet addresses. So Oracle Jet is definitely on the rise in the area of the UI layer.
Okay, thank you for that. Last question, what is the quickest way in terms of frameworks to bootstrap a fully functional microservice? To answer this question, I believe it's necessary to know that microservice in their architecture makes sense if the complete stack from the data model over to the UI is handled, or it's covered by one framework, and it's not an integration from different frameworks for a microservice that will be getting too complicated at the end. So in my perspective, as you see today, there are only two parts and two different frameworks available to cover the full stack. That is Spring Boot on one hand, on the other hand, it's ADF. So if we're talking about a complete landscape of different kind of microservices bound together in a complete application at the end, that is a very good starting point for ADF. On the other side, if you're setting up very small microservices to get in contact with different other vendors in a very distributed landscape, Spring Boot could be a good choice. So I take a look if there's any other questions coming up in the chat session beside, but I could not see any additional questions over there. So let me share last time my screen. So what I like to say is, if you are in the decision process for your framework, take into consideration we have a couple of ideas and a couple of expertise behind. We have a today's session with a very quick overview. It makes sense to put more time in this and perhaps in an orientation day. Or if your decision is already made to go to one of those frameworks, either Spring or PrimeFaces, Vaadin or ADF, we could have very good support in guiding you on that way to your framework of your choice. So thank you very much. First of all, thank you, Shay, for the wonderful presentation and the inside view from the Oracle perspective on ADF.
Thanks.
Thanks for the questions, and have a good day, everybody. See you soon in one of our next webinars. Bye-bye.